This is In the Arena. And now your host, Joe Paolino.
It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena. Good morning, and I'm Joe Paolino. Welcome to In the Arena. Today we got another special guest, a guy that's in the arena every day in Washington, D.C. Some people would think that if you were in the Bronx Zoo, you'd be doing the same stuff out there. But we have Congressman Jimmy Langevin with us. Congressman, good to be with you.
Ambassador, great to be with you. Thanks for having me on the program.
The big question, everybody's talking about it. What did Donald Trump say to you at the end of the State of the Union message? That was interesting. I love that.
As the president was going out, there were things in the speech that I agree with, things that I did not. But I took the high road, and I said, Mr. President, I appreciate what you had to say on infrastructure. We need to do more, obviously, with roads and bridge repair in our country, especially in Rhode Island. I also talked about how I appreciate what you had to say about career and technical education, job training, and I work a lot on those issues in a bipartisan way. And then I said, I really appreciate what you had to say on cutting the high cost of prescription drugs, as well as allowing people that are terminally ill to have access to experimental medications. And I said, if we can work together on these things, let's get it done.
And what did he say to you?
He said, let's work on that. So let's do it.
But you were right there, front and center.
There was a little, additional interaction, but that was the gist of it. And if there are ways that we can work together, we need to do that. The country is too divided right now, and certainly, as I said, there are things in the speech that I didn't agree with, didn't like, but we've got to find some way to find bipartisanship and common ground.
I've never seen this country, you're too young to remember, but in 1968, you probably weren't even born. What year were you born?
1964. So
64, right, you were 4
I'm
years
older
old.
than you think I am.
But I've never seen division in America the way it is since the Vietnam War, like it is today, and a lot of it's been polarized. Do you think, I'm sure you have Republican friends in the Congress that are in the House.
I do.
Why can't they do what Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan did? Let's go have a beer afterwards. Why do we have to try to destroy each other? Why can't we just try to build the country? Everett Dirksen with Lyndon Johnson when he was a majority leader. Yeah. Right now it's like try to kill the other guy.
Well, certainly the Congress is divided, but the country is really divided right now, and that's there's a variety of reasons for that. I can tell you that on every issue that I work on, I can point to a Republican co-sponsor or partner in the effort. You talk about cybersecurity or national security or career and technical education. I have colleagues on the other side of the aisle that I work with all the time. I'm proud of that. I think it's important to do that. I think it's up to us as individuals to try to find some way to work together. That's not perfect, and I'm not going to agree with my Republican colleagues on many issues, but where we can find agreement, we have to, as individuals, to start, at least hopefully it breaks down barriers to working on other things as well.
You're in the Intelligence Committee?
No, I was. I served there for 8 years, but there's a rule they have to rotate off after 8 years. So I served my 8 years there, and then I rotated back onto the Homeland Security Committee, and I also served as a senior member of the House Armed Services Committee.
What do you think of this memo that he wants to give out? Was the memo from the FBI, or was it from some Republican staffer that wrote a memo and they think it can start the fire?
So as of the taping of this show today, the memo is being released today, from what I understand, the Republican memo, the majority memo. I want to say that I say if we're going to release the Republican memo, the majority's memo, we also should be releasing the minority's memo. I've read both memos, and I can tell you that just releasing the majority's memo on this issue skews the narrative to an angle that fits with Donald Trump's spin on this, the Republican spin on this. Doesn't give you context about the whole situation and what was going on. You need to have the Democrats, the minority memo released as well for context. When people see the minority memo, they'll say, aha, oh now I see why, what you're talking about. But it's unfair and it's wrong, and it's really I think it just perverting the process, if you will, and politicizing the Intelligence Committee and this whole investigation by doing what Chairman Nunes did. It was wrong. And I've served for, again, 8 years on the Intelligence Committee. The chairman and ranking member of the committee always bent over backwards to work hard to get along through. One of the reasons I really like serving on that committee, because it was, if you're ever going to have bipartisanship, it is when it comes to national security. And the committee really worked very well together at that time. Right now, under Chairman Nunes, unfortunately, that's not happening right now.
It appears that it bothers me, but we can't win the White House just by criticizing the opposition. We have to come up with some plans. And I don't know if the Democratic Party is putting together plans. When we look at the leadership of the House, today, I mean, when I heard Schumer the other day talk about the closing down the government and about dealing with the presidents like Laurel and Hardy, I said to myself, I don't know one millennial who knows who Laurel and Hardy is. Right? I mean, do they?
Yeah, probably not.
So somebody has to, we have to have people speaking to the electorate and to your constituents that aren't, quite frankly, I hate to say it, that are 70, 80 years old. There's no young voices over there.
Well, one of the things I can tell you is that if Democrats hope to take the majority in Congress this November, and I think we're well positioned to do that, I think that we're in a very strong position right now. I think the momentum is with us. Again, unfortunately, I think the things that President Trump has done or said and worked on has further divided the country as opposed to bringing us together. And right now, I think people want a check and a balance on this White House and the administration in the direction that things are going in. But we do have to have a message that resonates with people. Now, we are working on that, and what we're trying to do is convey that our message now is a better deal. Kind of building on the concept of the New Deal of FDR's time and all the things that Democrats have been successful in creating and working on over the years. The better deal now says higher pay, better jobs, better future.
I want to talk a little bit more about the State of the Union. The president, and by the way, his polling numbers went up after that speech. So the country must have felt that he did a pretty good job trying to show a balance. Unfortunately, I mean, he is somewhat like Jello. I mean, he doesn't, whatever he says, you don't know if that's the same thing next week.
Yeah, when he's on script, he's very good, he's focused, and what he says does resonate with people. It's when he goes off script and he goes rogue that he starts contradicting himself, and it's hard to pin him down. It's, as Chuck Schumer said, kind of like negotiating with Jello. But again, there were some things in there that I agree with, and I think those we have to work on.
What about, he talked about creating jobs, and he talked about job training.
Yeah.
Weren't you on a committee that helped put that together?
So I co-chair the Career and Technical Education Caucus. Now, a caucus is not the same as a committee. We don't have hearings on legislation or pass out legislation, but what we do is we hold briefings, and it's a way for members who care about any particular issue that are of like mind to be more active on the issue. So we'll bring in experts, subject matter experts, to educate members and staff on a particular topic. So Career and Technical Education, I co-chair this with Glenn Thompson, G.T. Thompson from Pennsylvania, a Republican colleague of mine. And we're trying to focus on how do we put more resources and have the right policies in place to educate our young people and train our young people in the relevant jobs that are available today. So anything from it could be in cybersecurity and IT jobs, or it could be things like in construction or plumbing and electricians. Relevant jobs that are in demand now that society needs, and that right now, again, there's this huge skills gap here, like advanced manufacturing. Perhaps in our generation, our fathers and grandfathers' generation, we think of old, dirty factories. And
right. It's not that way anymore, is it?
You go through any manufacturing place right now, and it's all high-tech equipment, robotics, computer programming, but there's a huge skills gap. Every place that I go to now in Rhode Island, when I'm touring these companies, they all talk to me about how they're struggling to find people with the relevant skills that they need to do the jobs that are available. Huge skills gap, but also a huge opportunity to put our people to work with great paying jobs.
Do you think there'll be a bill on infrastructure, and how do you think it gets paid?
Yeah, so that's the big unknown question.
Because he talked about it.
He did, talked about it in the speech. He and his Republican colleagues have talked a lot about private investment. And so the devil's always in the details. We're not going to be able to do this all with just private investment. It's going to take public resources. Right now, for example, the gas tax primarily funds the Highway Trust Fund that helps us to repair our roads and bridges. We're going to need more general revenue to help fund these roads and bridge projects. But certainly there's a role for private investment, but it can't be all of that. And when we say private investment, probably the first thing that comes to mind is toll roads. Now that's become, things that other states have done to fund and build private roads, for example. They have that in Virginia now, where you want to go on the high-speed lane during peak hours. It's like a carpool lane, but it'll cost you money to do it. And high peak hours, just recently I heard the story that was like $40 or in excess of $40 for a 5 or a 10-mile stretch of this highway in Virginia. So I don't know that just private roads and private tolls are the way to go. There may be a component for private investment, but it can't be the vast majority.
You were just involved in a big economic development project in Rhode Island, in Johnson, in your district, where you've got about a $300 million campus of Citizens Bank going there, and you worked to get those highway ramps to go right there. That had to go through the Federal Highway Administration.
Sure.
Is it tough when you have to go through those kind of communications? Because I know that development would not take place without those ramps.
Well, let me say there were a lot of people that helped make that happen. I want to give great credit to Mayor Paolino in Johnston. Talk about a mover and shaker in
he's
that area.
The dean of the mayors of Rhode Island.
He's a dynamo when it comes to making things happen in Johnston and bringing all the relevant parties together. So the executives from Citizens Bank, and you look at the cities and town officials, the state officials, and the federal delegation.
But do you like getting involved in that kind of stuff, with the economic development stuff?
Of course. Anything's going to grow the economy and grow jobs in Rhode Island, move our state forward, as an elected official, it has to be a primary responsibility for all of us. And I know when you're a mayor, you know about this better than anybody and how all that has to come together.
I got to tell you, my dad told me, he said, don't let people don't give them time to think about it. When you get the momentum, keep it going, push it, close the deal. When people go home and they want to think about it, everything changes. Yeah. So when you're with these companies, you got to keep it driving it until the deal is done. That's right. And that's what the guy, that Knippa guy from Citizens Bank, he kept on driving it with the local and state officials.
Yes, he did. Mike worked very hard on that, and Bruce Van Saun, at Citizens Bank, and a number of other individuals. I am glad, by the way, that Citizens really doubled down and made a commitment.
They could have gone anywhere else.
Could have gone anywhere.
Because they have a big presence in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. When RBS sold off Citizens Bank, the big question was, were they going to be moving out of Rhode Island? They've made an investment here, and that's great.
If the Democrats take over the House, does Pelosi automatically become Speaker? Is that a fait accompli? Is that something that you're committed to her already? Is that something you're going to listen to see what other candidates?
Well, certainly Nancy right now is our leader, and she will presumably seek the speakership again. I don't know what the outcome will be. I think she is going to have to go before the caucus, as maybe other people will decide.
So she's going to have to call you again for your vote?
She's going to have to call everyone in the caucus for their vote again, and we're going to have to talk about it and see, who is the future and who has the best vision for moving the caucus forward and moving the Congress and the country forward. And so certainly she's going to have she'll have a strong candidacy for speaker, but I think we have to consider everything thoughtfully, and I have a lot of respect for how hard work, how smart she is, but she's going to have to make the case for the caucus as to why she should be reelected again.
Cybersecurity, you've been very involved in that. Explain it in simple terms. It seems like there's just too much transparency going on. Everybody has everybody's information.
Well, they shouldn't necessarily have everybody's information, but the reality is that the internet has made us more connected and has grown the economy in ways we could have never really imagined. And we're the country that makes most use of the internet, but we're most vulnerable because of that dependency, if you will. And although the internet was built as this free and open architecture, there are vulnerabilities that criminals and terrorists or nation states have exploited, and it's brought with it great vulnerability. So everything from companies being hacked and personal and private information of customers being stolen, medical records being compromised or stolen, nation states stealing national security secrets. I mean, the list goes on, and so many people have been affected, having their identities stolen or having their personal financial records taken. So it's a national security priority to close those vulnerabilities. It's never a problem, by the way, that we're ever going to solve. Cybersecurity can't be solved per se, but we can manage that risk down to something that's much more manageable than what it is today. That's I co-chair the cybersecurity caucus in the Congress. It's been a lot of time on this issue, and but we have to put more focus, time, and attention into it, and we have to have the right people in place. So again, jobs opportunity too, and we have to educate our young people to have these relevant skills.
But don't you need the people like the Bill Gateses and the fellow from Facebook and Twitter and all those tech companies, get them involved to try to help this, because
Sure.
they've created part of this so-called
Ecosystem.
internet highway,
Yeah.
and they need to help us try to protect that privacy.
They do, and they are, and that's why it has to be a public-private partnership. Government can't solve this problem on its own, and private sector can't solve it on its own. Certainly individual people can't solve it on their own, but everybody has a role to play. By working together collaboratively, we can, again, close these vulnerabilities in cyberspace down to something that is much more manageable than what it is today. I'll mention too, by the way, it's tax season is coming upon us. As of the taping of this show this morning, I did a free file event with some of the tax software companies. It's a free program that was created back in 2003, and people that are making under $66,000 a year can go onto the IRS website or even the Rhode Island Vision Taxation website and go to the free file section, and people can download and access the software and do their taxes free of charge. There's also the VITA program also will help give free advice to people to help them fill out their taxes. And by the way, the sooner people file, the less likely that criminals can take advantage of and get their tax return that they would be entitled to the tax dollars that would be refunded, the tax refund. So you want to file early, but again, cybersecurity it plays into this as well, and again, we've got to work harder at closing the vulnerabilities.
Let me ask you, people take for granted, we have 2 U.S. senators, but every state does.
Yeah.
In Rhode Island, we take it for granted, we have 2 United States congressmen.
Yes.
But that could change to possibly 1 if we don't count every single person living here. Explain why we could lose a congressional seat.
So it's based on population, and so there are only 435 members of the United States House of Representatives. And so the rule of thumb is that you have 1 representative for every 500,000 people that you have in the state. Rhode Island has always, we've kind of hovered around just over 1 million people, so hence, therefore we've had 2 representatives for many decades now. However, the formula doesn't exactly work out. If you take 435 and divide it into the population, it would be much larger than that in each congressional district. Now, there are some districts, for example, that have 700,000 or 800,000 people in the district. So we've been kind of hovering in the bubble.
But we need at least 500. So we have to at least 500,000 in each district.
No. You have the rule of thumb is you have 1 representative for every 500 people, 500,000 people in the district. The math doesn't quite work out that way because in other states, and it's a convoluted formula.
How many more people do we need to count in order to keep our 2 congressional seats?
Well, if we add another 50 to 100,000 people in the state, we'd probably be assured to keep another congressional seat at least for another 10 years. But we're on the bubble right now. It's not certain that Rhode Island's going to lose a seat, but we have to make sure we have an accurate count. We have to make sure that we continue to grow jobs and the economy. That's why I like what the governor is doing, focusing on job creation. And we've got to make sure that we have an accurate count and make sure that keep growing the population as much as we can, so we can keep 2 seats in Congress, to make sure that we maintain the influence that we have when it comes to fighting for federal dollars and programs that benefit the people of Rhode Island. That's why it's important to have as many voices in Washington fighting for us as possible.
So people watching, they have to make sure that whatever kids, grandchildren, parents, aunts, uncles, if they get this stuff in the mail for the census, make sure to fill it out, because that's how we keep that extra congressional person.
That's exactly right. That make sure that when you get your census envelope and or the census takers come to the door, that you're giving accurate information, and we're counting every person in the state.
What's hot, Jim?
Well, I can tell you what's hot is that thanks to your work and things that the governor's doing and private investment, this Rhode Island and Providence in particular is becoming Crane Town.
Crane Town.
And so that's what's hot in Rhode Island right now. All of the building that's going on, and appreciate the work you're doing in certainly the real estate field to grow our state and grow downtown Providence.
What's not hot?
Well, what's not hot, sadly, is that we're coming up on the 15th anniversary of the Station nightclub fire. It was a very sad time. We lost 100 Rhode Islanders who were killed in that fire. Many more were injured. What has come out of that years later, after fighting for and working hard on resources to have buildings have sprinklers in them. Finally, when the tax bill was just completed, there are now tax credits available for businesses that put in fire sprinkler systems.
Wow.
And there's never been more than 2 deaths in any building where there's been a functioning fire sprinkler system. So we hope that going forward, it's going to make everybody safer and save lives.
Tell you what I think's hot: firefighters. In this cold weather in Providence, Cranston, there was a big fire out there. A lot of 3-deckers have been getting on fire to work in the cold.
Yeah.
I think our firefighters are the true heroes.
I completely agree.
And I'll tell you what I don't think's hot: damn guns. Too many shootings. I can't understand why Congress doesn't get involved. I can't understand why a Republican and Democrat can't sit down together to do some laws that make some sense. But let me ask you one quick question. Who do you support for governor?
Well, right now I'm with Governor Raimondo, and I believe she's going to be our nominee, and I think she's going to get reelected.
Okay, that's our show for today with Congressman Jim Langevin. Thank you, Congressman, for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you again next week in the arena.